those are the motions. 4.1 in the name of Councillor Neville. Can I invite Councillor Neville to move the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I did take 10 minutes if I may, Mr. Mayor, because I want to start by saying that it is indeed regrettable that we should be having to have this meeting at all. Still more to be having that meeting on the eve of Christmas, as it were. The reason, of course, that we're having to have this meeting tonight is because of what I regard as the contemptible attitude and arrogance displayed by the majority party at the last council meeting, when this matter was the subject of a motion which I had put down and which could have been discussed and dealt with it at that time. 3 times, Mr. Mayor, you will recall, it was moved that business be rearranged in order that to happen. 3 times it was voted down. That, in my view, is a disgraceful arrogance and one that doesn't at all reflect credit on the council as a corporate body, or in particular the Labour group in administration. The issue in this motion, Mr. Mayor, is quite simple. First, we say that there should have been proper consultation before the decision was taken, at least if consultation had been done, and it had shown, if it were the case, that there was some body of support for the proposal that became the decision. Then, of course, you might be heard to say, well, that's not so bad, is it? Because people have been consulted, they knew what they were being asked, they knew what the consequences were, and if they agreed with it, they were good. But they didn't. They weren't consulted. And I'm afraid I still have very grave reservations about what Councillor Bond refers to as a consultation with the police. The Borough Commander was very equivocal about that when she sat on that dais 2 or 3 weeks ago. In fact, she paused for some considerable time before she could answer my question about whether the police were consulted. And when she did actually reply, as will be a matter of record, she said that it was a matter, the decision was a matter for the council, that the police liked to work in partnership with the council, and that they would hope that they would work in partnership with them on this, particularly in the circumstances where there are a rising trend in burglaries in the borough, and in fact, if anyone doesn't know it already, we are have the 4th highest rate of burglary in the borough, as confirmed by the Assistant Commissioner and the Borough Commander at that meeting just 3 weeks ago. This therefore is a matter that should have been the subject of consultation with the police at the very least, not least because Councillor Bond is the Cabinet Member for Community Safety. It's not simply good enough to talk to officers in the Community Safety unit of his department. He needed to talk to, or ensure that they had to talk to and have proper responses from the police. Because it was well and truly said at the OSC meeting, which the minutes record, that in fact the police had said to those residents who came and gave evidence, as it were, at that meeting, that they had not been consulted. So I'm afraid the whole issue of consultation is at large. What I will say to you now is that I don't intend to let that matter rest, because if I think this council is being misled by Councillor Bond, I will root it out and find the answer, and I shall put freedom of information request into the Borough Commander first thing in the morning for an answer as to what consultation took place. We have to say, Mr. Mayor, that this is an example, another example of senior members not doing the jobs for which they have been elected and appointed to. It is simply no use saying, oh well, as he does in this answer tonight at the OSC said similar, oh well, it's an operational decision, oh it's a management decision, oh it doesn't really matter, is what it matters, is what that translates into. There was no consultation on the face of the report. I've read that report very carefully. there is not a single reference to the word consultation. There is not a single reference to the word burglaries. Notwithstanding the Community Safety Unit, if they were consulted, knew full well that we had the fourth highest rate of burglaries in London. Not a record to be proud of, Councillor Bond. And if that being the case, one would have expected you as a Cabinet member to have looked at that report, seen it, seen that it had no consultation, and immediately sent it back so that consultation could carry on. The report talked about the alternative methods that might have alternative action that might have been taken, one of which was to ask the Friends whether they would themselves, as one of their group stars, like to volunteer to do some of this locking themselves so that they could buy into the saving that you're seeking to make. That wasn't pursued. It could have been pursued when the paper was brought to you, but it wasn't pursued. Nothing happened unless and until we called this matter in. If we hadn't called this matter in, these pedestrian gates would now be locked. That's the reality, Councillor Bond, Mr. Mayor. That is the reality we're living in. We have had lots of serious crimes in this borough, lots of serious crimes. I won't refer to the awful details of some of them in parks, but these are the sorts of issues we're dealing with. And social behaviour is another issue. We are constantly being told, not least by Councillor Aitner, that ASB is on the rise in the borough, notwithstanding that it's actually falling a little according to the borough commander. But the fact that we know that ASB is a problem, and I don't make a political point about that because it's been going on for some time. ASB is happening in the borough, and it was another reason for Councillor Bond to take that proposal much more seriously. If the officers didn't take it seriously, it was up to the politicians to do so. That's what we're here for. We're not here simply to be rubber stamps for any proposal that comes before you. That's what it's about. That's what government is about. The decision, in my view, Mr. Mayor, is irresponsible, and the word I use in the motion is senseless. It doesn't hold water at all. And what I particularly dislike is what I consider as the contempt in which the public are held. If one looks at the answers to questions that various of us put down at the last council meeting on this subject, 3 answers, 3 questions, 3 answers, all of them were just dismissive of the whole thing. Not a hint of an apology, not a hint of we might have got it wrong. No, we'll just do as we please. Well, the reality is, Mr. Mayor, you can only do as you please for so long. You can't do as you please because there's an old constitutional principle that I'm sure you're all aware of. You can only govern with the consent of the people. And once you lose the respect for the people, you lose the consent. And that's what you need to bear in mind when you're making decisions of this kind. Councillor Taylor, when he answered my question 13, sought to blame the head of service for the misdeeds. Well, he may do it. But the fact of the matter is, the Cabinet member signed it off, and the Cabinet member has to take responsibility. And the Cabinet member acted irresponsibly, and it has to account for his actions. It hasn't accounted so far, and we say that in view of the public concern widely expressed since the decision first came to us, the proper thing now is to abandon this proposal altogether and make arrangements like the ones mentioned in the alternative arrangements in the paper.
1 more minute, Councillor.
By consulting and talking to the Friends, I don't know because I haven't talked to them, but I have a sneaking suspicion that some of them at least will be prepared to do what at least one of the groups is doing at the moment, which is to take on that responsibility. It's a very important issue. It's not a light issue. That's why we've taken the steps of bringing it forward in this way. It's not something that can be lightly dismissed. Crime is on the increase in terms of burglary. The parks we're referring to abut residential properties, and it simply means
30 seconds.
Simply means that you have to take precautions. To take the view that Councillor Bond took in the OSC, oh well, this happens. we might as well all leave our doors open if that's the case and let the burglars come in there. Let's just make it easy for everyone to commit the crime. That's what this is about. Wholly irresponsible, wholly foolish and wholly senseless.
Is that seconded?
Mr. Mayor, the decision to not lock the parks tonight was called in by myself because we had failed to recognise the potential implications that this decision would have, and we failed to consult with key stakeholders. Given the continued concern and the fact that for once we have an audience this evening, I believe that we should abandon this senseless proposal. At the moment, a member of staff locks up the park at night. If they see anyone in the park, they tell them to get out. Well, in a nice format. Without a member of staff locking the park and telling them to leave, people will have the opportunity of staying for longer than closing, especially in the summer months. This potential decision would create an open invitation for people to stay after the designated closing time, under the cover of darkness. The original report backs his argument, because item 7.1 of the original report states that the crime and antisocial behaviour could increase within the parks as they become more accessible. The term accessible is that open invitation. It was actually in the report. Wildlife could not be protected, and wildlife does get taken from those parks that are left open or only partially locked. Homes that back onto parks will be vulnerable to burglary, and burglary has been an issue that the council once highlighted in its capacity as Cabinet Member for Community Safety. If pedestrian gates are left unlocked, motorists will be able to get into parks and motor around causing noise and disturbance. The Cabinet Member and officers may say that more crime happens in the day in parks, but then it would do because the gates are left open. The original report even acknowledged that town parks are high level ASB. Yet if the proposal goes ahead in April, this park will not be locked at night. That's stated in the report. The original report states that the police can remove people after designated closing time, but you cannot get in touch with the parks police after 10 p.m. at night. There are no more than a handful of parks police officers, and there are no proposals for more parks police officers either in the new year. The council is therefore putting extra pressure on our safe and neighbourhood police team. Another key risk of this proposal, for why it should be abandoned, is mentioned in the original report, is the lack of security of the council's own buildings. The report was signed without a programme in place as to how the toilets and changing rooms would be used. They said they would be left for people to do whatever they wish to, latest of the night. A large amount of taxpayer funded investment has gone into our parks for new play equipment, community cafes, green gyms, for example. We've got a new options centre in Albany Park. Yeah, millions have gone into it. We're not locking that side of the park because it's not the Bell Lane side. We're not protecting that investment. That's taxpayers' money going to that, and we're doing nothing. It's the people's money, and we're not protecting that investment. The saving is an estimated £26,000. If we have to replace any play equipment, which has happened in our parks, it was even on regional television, if we have to replace that, plus man hours, that £26,000 just goes in a flash. That's why we have to abandon this proposal. Mr. Mayor, originally there was a lack of consultation. Councillor Bond says about the police tonight. I have an email from the lead police officer to the Parks police team, who thanks me for letting her know, because the only reason she knew is because I told my local safety neighbourhood team sergeant about the decision, and he told her. That's how lack of consultation it was on this report. And I'm quite prepared to show you that email. Also, I hope that that is the truth. Okay, we fund the Parks Police. They are the professionals. Their whole job is to make sure our security is safe. Yet they were not asked. Also, the local safety neighbourhood team sergeants, those officers whose job it will be to get the people out of the parks tonight, were not asked. I'm sure you can come up, you probably ask some inspector or a borough commander, but it's not going to be the borough commander who gets to
30 seconds, Councillor Levin.
I'm sorry, and the consultation, you never asked the Friends group. On our website, you say that these groups are here for the benefit of the community. They're here to ensure that the voice of the community is heard on the management of our parks. When it came to the management of our parks, you failed to ask them. You didn't ask them whether they would love them or their view at all. The consultation is a joke. It's a meeting. It's a cosy chat. You get minutes of a meeting. 1 set of minutes talks about a park, but doesn't actually realise there's no pedestrian gates in that park, so actually it doesn't get affected by the proposals at all. But that could have gone into an OSC report. A wrong
Time.
minute going
Time.
to the
Time.
legal statutory.
We've run out of time, Councillor Levin. Thank you. Councillor Vaughan. Councillors, can you please not interfere and just listen? You all have right to talk, okay? While somebody's talking, just listen. Whether both sides. Thank you.
I think, can I say that we have to be clear about what we're talking about. We're talking about, for 1 year, pedestrian gates to get open at night on parks. The vehicle access has remained locked. And if the parks will be reviewed consistently during that year. So if any pattern develops, we have the choice of reversing the decision in that park or keeping it going for other matters in. And there's one park just been mentioned, funnily enough, which you can't lock, although there's a community centre in it. It's got massive CCTV in that park, so we would pick up any antisocial behaviour via that means. And it's only affecting, I'll say only, it's obviously affecting the 20 in the borough. But one of the things that worries me about this tonight is really this motion passed stops the scrutiny process which we all agreed to some months ago. And in that, and Councillor was slightly on there, I did change the report to overall scrutiny. I did say at the meeting that I thought the starting the process in the winter was a wrong time of year to do it. The best time to start this process would be in the summer. So those that have got concerns and fears, that's been expressed by the minority side, could be taken on board because there's more likely to be antisocial behaviour in the summer than there probably is in the winter. And all the facts that we're getting now about activities in parks, you must remember all these activities in parks are being done when the gates are shut. They're locked. So I know people say it's going to happen, it's going to increase, it's going to do this, but that, in all senses, it's an assumption. And because the process is being reviewed during the whole year, the whole period, then we will pick that up. On the consultation with the police, I can tell you, Councillor Neville, the Superintendent Carl Robinson was spoken to by a Head of Service and Community Safety during the drafting process of this report. And he was content with the fact that monitoring was going on during the process. And when we lock parks at the moment, we don't go through the parks searching for people. We just lock them. We don't walk through the park and chase people out. We just lock them. So you can get locked in. And there's one person on this side who got locked in recently to a park at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and had to ring me up in the Civic Centre to get herself out. So I mean, we don't look when we lock them, and that's part of the contract's fault. So, since the decision has been made, there's 2 other London authorities who come the same line as us, and that's Bexley and Richmond. And they've so far reported no crime increase in those parks, but again, it's the time of year that maybe that's not the case. Regardless if you pass the motion tonight and the scrutiny process falls over, that will stop, of course, the petition of Councillor Neville and Mr Gibson getting running up ready for the scrutiny panel in April. We will still talk to the friends groups about their concerns. And I've always had an open invite to talk to friends groups since I've been doing this job, which is more than we say for Councillor Neville when he was doing it. And can I take time out to say thanks Nicky Filzer and the staff for arranging those meetings and putting their time and effort into it. But those part of their jobs is an added onus and task on already a tight budget. Going back to when Councillor Neville was doing this job, I remember with fondness Councillor Neville using the Q2 Stadium as a recycling plant because he goes to Cart Hatch Lane Depot. I don't recall, I must say, any consultations with the friends groups then, which probably was because it was an illegal act probably. It certainly would be now if it wasn't then. So, There we are. It's on YouTube, by the way. Just put Councillor Terry Neville in YouTube and up it pops. Our comparison spend in parks since we won in 2010 with your time is £1 billion more than you. And just to prove how good we are, we've won an award, Friends in Trust. Glasgow and the Vale of Morgan,
30 seconds, Councillor Wong.
towns, and I think this reflects the Friends groups, the work they do, the staff, what they do, and what some of us do supporting those activities.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notwithstanding Councillor Chamberlain's comments, I did believe that there was a suggestion that maybe there should have been more parks and open spaces law. I do think there was some suggestion there. And I wonder why, therefore, in the 8 years in power, if this is such a big issue, and if it isn't political posturing, as members obviously suggest, why they didn't, in fact, fence off all of the parks and put gates on them. Why do we have so many of our parks where the fences are below 1.8 metres, which would be a reasonable height? And Councillor Levy has adequately suggested there are substantial numbers where that is not the case. The reality, of course, is they didn't do it because they didn't think it was an issue. They've suddenly decided it was an issue. They didn't think it was an issue. Had it not been for Councillor Bond's decision, would we have had a debate tonight to put fences and gates on the other open spaces? No, we would not. It's political posturing. I have to tell you, and I will also quote Councillor Georgiou, who challenged members to go to their forums and talk about this. In Pond's End, we took away the gates. We took away the gates. I've had not a single complaint about activity in the evening in our park. The reality is, and particularly, I'm surprised members opposite don't understand this, particularly at a time of very difficult financial situation. You should make decisions on evidence. You shouldn't make decisions to try and score cheap political points at a conflict. And that's what we've got. The evidence, unless you describe the evidence produced by our officers as a lie, the evidence we have is there is no relationship between the security of parks in this way and antisocial behaviour. It's trying to suggest it, but it simply isn't the case. And I think my friend Councillor Hura will, as he's reflected, the vandalism in Grovelands, which is unacceptable, took place with the parks. The fact is, if you're trying to, the suggestion that you would find it in some way difficult to climb over a small fence, but then would find it easy to climb over a large fence wall and break into a property is purely stupid. It isn't logical. There is no evidence. Now what has been suggested by Councillor Bond is we'll make decisions on evidence. We will do this, and if the evidence were to prove that we should do something else, then we'll do something else. But I have to tell members opposite, going forward, and I know you don't like to hear the truth, going forward with significant levels of cuts, we will make decisions that are very uncomfortable, because we have to, and when we make them, we will use the best evidence we have. And some of them will be uncomfortable. There'll be some that you don't like, there will be some that the public don't like, and there will be many that my members on this side don't like and don't want to make. But one of the responsibilities of being in the administration is to make the best decisions you think you can make. The best decisions. And for us, evidence-led decision-making is better than political posturing.
Sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry. It's been just a single motion, it's been more over an hour now. Sorry, I do apologise. I'm not going to allow anybody else to speak because it was a fair debate. Now, Councillor Neville, would you like to sum it up and use your right of, to exercise the right of your reply?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do wish to do that. First of all, I want to say something about what Councillor Taylor is saying. Of course, we accept that decisions will have to be made going forward about how we meet these shortfalls, and that's something we might debate in this next meeting to follow this one. But the fact of the matter is that when you take decisions, there is always a cost and there's always a benefit, and the two have to be looked at. And what you have to do, and wasn't done in this case, in my view, is to say, well, if we could save 26,000, it would certainly have 26,000 in the bank and nobody would suffer. No one would be arguing having this discussion. A, you can't say that, and B, moreover, what you can say with almost certainty is, as several of my colleagues have said, you've only got to get one major incident, semi-major incident in the context of crime, and your 26,000 is gone really because it has to be used by other public services, namely the police, in actually dealing with it. So public first gains nothing. And let's not have the civil service argument, oh, that's somebody else's budget. It's all public money, it's all taxpayers. Now I come now to Councillor Lieber, who said that he quoted my consent to the people statement and said that, well, you hadn't got approval and therefore you had to consent to the people. Well, you had an election on the most dishonest manifesto that could have been put a manifesto which you full well knew could not be delivered because you full well knew that you had not planned for any cuts beyond 2015. Fact. So let's have none of this talk. Then we hear Councillor Anderson. Now, Councillor Anderson is someone I have a great deal of respect for. Therefore, with some surprise, Mr. Mayor, that I hear him talking in the language that he does, but doesn't repeat one word of what he's recorded as having said at the overview and scrutiny meeting. And I'll refresh his memory with the minutes of the before meeting. The minutes say, Councillor Anderson commented that the level of savings appeared to reduce through the report. In other words, that's a euphemism for saying you haven't got it right. And two, he also commented that greater consultation of residents may have been helpful. Fact. Three, he then echoed the suggestion that assistance from the Friends of the Parks would seem to be the best way forward. And he didn't say it, but I will say it, but that wasn't pursued by Councillor Bond, even though it was flagged up by the officers as an alternative method going forward. So what we have, we're expected here in this Alice in Wonderland fantasy world that we live in, we're expected to take the view from the various statements that have been made by various members opposite, Mr. Mayor, that we will literally start locking the gates when the burglars have flown. That's what you're really saying. Give it a trial, let's have a few burglaries and let's get on. And then I turn to the last one. This is not evidence-based at all. Anybody who knows anything, I don't know if there's any lawyers on your side, but if they looked at this and thought this was evidence, my goodness, I think they'd be up before the Law Society for negligence. And what you've got here is a paper that talks about, praise in aid, something that they pretend is evidence. It talks about locked parks and non-locked parks. It gives some offences over 5 years, taken part in 6 parks, all of which happen to be in the east of the borough, where, as a matter of record, the rate of burglary is lower than it is in the west. Burglary, of course, is not an offence that can be committed in the park, therefore it cannot be actually cited in these figures. But more importantly, the night-time offender is the same whichever park you look at. So to make this nonsense that you've had some great evidence before you that enable Councillor to put on his wizard's hat and come to this view is absolute nonsense. And it's an insult to the intelligence of people in the gallery, it's an insult to the intelligence of the people in this borough, and it's certainly an insult to my intelligence and my colleagues also. And we reject it 100%. Yeah.